In this episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast, I have Jesse and Marni on, and we're going to be talking about, they run a podcast called the Ultimate Health Podcast. We're going to be talking about how to increase your health, some of the lessons they've learned. They've had some amazing guests on their show, and in fact, Jesse does it full time. So we're also going to talk about both of their entrepreneurial journeys. Both Jesse and Marni have some really cool things that they've done. So first off, thank you guys both so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Travis, we're pumped. Thank you for having us on the show.
So
it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Let's get started with both you guys, and I'll let you guys each take your turn. But how did you guys get down this path? How did you guys get to the point where we are now having this conversation?
Well, for me, I started out actually as a chiropractor, and that was my first career after university, chiropractic college. And I practiced for about 4.5 years. And about the last year and a half while I was practicing, Marni and I started this podcast, the Ultimate Health Podcast, like you mentioned. And it just really grew over that last year and a half. And it got to the point where it was starting to take up more and more of my time, and I was practicing. So it just got way too busy, and I basically had to pick one or the other. And I just knew I could reach a lot more people through the podcast, and I was having a lot more fun doing that. So that's the route I picked, and just haven't looked back.
That's awesome. And for you, Marni, I know that I read your bio, and you've launched a few books. You've done a few different entrepreneurial things. How in cooking school too? Can you talk a little bit about launching the books and the cooking school?
Yeah. Well, my business started with a passion for nutrition and health and wellness. So I was working as a nutritionist and a chef. I opened up a cooking studio. So I was doing that for several years, working with people, inspiring people how to eat better, live better. Through that came 2 book deals. So, that all kind of happened pretty much back to back. And over the last couple of years, it's just been really figuring out where my core message is starting to go. And I've been working face to face with a lot of people, having a brick and mortar, which has been amazing. And the books have been great. But at the same time, I'm wanting to reach more people. Like Jesse said, having this platform now to share a similar message around health and well-being, but being able to reach more people and having fun with that and seeing, the lateral ability of the online world and what our podcast has done, not only for our own health, but for our listeners. It's just amazing. So this is kind of where I'm starting to shift my attention and focus. And I hope to actually create some new projects within the empire of the podcast.
Awesome. And I know this is going to be a pretty big question, but you guys have had some amazing guests on your show. If you had to kind of boil it down to the top, let's say 3, 4, 5 lessons you've learned from having all these amazing guests, what kind of lessons have you learned?
So many. Our show really is constructed around all things health. And as broad as that is, within that, we've tackled everything from nutrition to sleep to yoga, meditation, fitness, movement. So within each of those categories, and Jesse and I kind of ourselves have created something that we like to call the 6 pillars of health. And we find a lot of our guests fall within that. So our knowledge in each category has dramatically upgraded. And when it comes to nutrition specifically, and this is something that we were already living and believing in from day one. This is how Jesse and I pretty much met over whole foods and real food. So that's always been a core value. And through the podcast, it's really just reconfirmed and sealed the deal that, you really have to pay attention to your own body, how you eat, making sure that you're in alignment with that. And it comes down to just eating real food. So it's not so much learning something new through that realm, but it was definitely reconfirming through our guests, that everyone's on a similar page with that same message. Other than that, sleep, the importance of sleep, the importance of movement and getting your body moving throughout the day, no matter what. You don't have to be stuck to a gym routine or, something hardcore. It can just be something that involves getting your body going every single day. And meditation. That's been another huge one. So just the importance of having that quiet time, whatever that means for you, and everyone listening is going to have a different correspondence to that, but having that time alone to just reflect, being more mindful, deep breathing, that's just a few. There's so many more.
So in the 6 pillars, I got diet, sleep, movement, meditation. I don't know if those are 4 of the 6, and what would the other 2 be?
The other 2 are self-care, so taking care of ourselves, doing things that build us up every day, whether it's, joining certain classes or groups or taking care of yourself at home. And then community, who you associate with, who are the people around you, who are your closest people in your life that are supporting you or not supporting you, and how can you kind of create your own tribes.
So I want to dive into each of these, and let's start with diet actually first. So you said it already. Real food is the cornerstone, and I've talked to a lot of different people in the diet space, and some people say, well, grains aren't real food, or dairy isn't real food, or whatever kind of thing. So when you say real food, what does that mean? I guess.
Well, for us, it comes down to whole foods, organic, local when possible, and just less foods that are in packages. We could really dig into that a little bit, but there are some good superfoods and stuff you can get that's from around the world that isn't a package, but less of that kind of stuff and just more whole foods that you're cooking at home and just taking the time to make those quality meals at home.
I totally agree with this. Especially with the packaged foods, I see a lot of my friends and family eat a lot of packaged foods. And don't get me wrong, every once in a while I will too. But when I look at the ingredients on there, it's kind of crazy the amount of junk that goes into packaged foods.
Yeah,
And
sure. And there's processed foods and packaged foods, and differentiating those. Processed foods are the real ones we want to make sure we're avoiding. Things that are often frozen. There's all kinds of crappy salt in there to preserve it. Most of the stuff has just been cooked to the point where there's not a lot of nutrition left in it, and it's just sitting there for months on end.
so this might be a hard question to or answer, but what would an ideal day in the life of like either one of you guys, if you had your ideal day of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what would that look like?
All right. Well, it does depend on the day, but typically in the morning, and it also depends on the season. So we're in the middle of winter right now, so it depends on what we're feeling. So smoothies are definitely a go-to. And when I say smoothie, I like to make it with mostly berries and greens as opposed to really sweet with a lot of fruit. Usually we add some kind of protein. That could be a bone broth protein or a collagen protein, and then putting in lots of fat. So whether it's coconut butter or a nut butter, something like that, and putting in a bowl, maybe eating it with a spoon, sprinkling some bee pollen on top. So that's one variation. Our warm version of that is what we like to call an elixir. So more of a hot beverage, but that's got a lot of fat in it. So it's actually sustaining and filling. And that can be like a turmeric latte, which is really big right now, or some kind of hot chocolate with chaga mushrooms or whatever superfoods that we're kind of feeling, but it's loaded with coconut milk or coconut oil, something to sustain us. Lunchtime, salad, typically a big salad or coconut wrap with, maybe some leftover roasted root vegetables or some kind of animal protein, avocado, usually included into most meals. Afternoon snack could be an elixir or some kind of nuts or seeds or coconut chips, maybe a little bit of organic unsulfured dried fruit or fresh piece of fruit. And then dinner, very similar to lunch. Could be a lean animal protein or wild fish or some kind of green. There's always greens multiple times a day. That is a non-negotiable priority for both of us. So whether it's a salad or a saute, and root vegetables, really, really big, especially here in Canada right now in the middle of winter. Root veggies, cooking them up in a soup is right up our alley.
So root vegetables, does that include things like sweet potato, rutabaga, or what are examples of the root vegetables?
So sweet potato, turnips, squash, beets. So I made a soup last night that had celeriac root, squash, rutabaga, cauliflower. Oh my God, it was so good, and just pureed up, and it was like a delicious, creamy butternut squash soup with all these other fun roots in there.
That sounds really good. And it sounds like it's a perfect wintertime treat, actually.
Yes, it is.
Let's dive into the next pillar, which is sleep. And with sleep, that's something that, I still struggle with. What advice do you have for the people out there that just they know they're not getting good enough quality sleep? How can they improve that?
I would say first thing is make sure you're setting a bedtime and a wake up time. So our circadian clock wants to wake up and go to bed at the same time each and every night. And this includes weekends. This is when it becomes a little bit more tricky, where a lot of us like to burn the candle at both ends during the week and make up for lost time on the weekends. But that really isn't a good thing to get into, and the body isn't going to perform its best that way. You want to make sure you're setting those times and sticking to them day in, day out.
One of the issues I run into, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners of this podcast run into as well, is during the week, I naturally I want to get up early. I want to be productive. But then, Friday comes and it's tough because most of my friends aren't okay with going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. Most of my friends, 10 o'clock is when, the night starts. Do you have any advice for how to combat that? Is that just get friends that are on the same page, or how can I get around that?
I think for Marty and I, that's actually what's happened over time. And we hadn't really planned it out that way. It's just we hang out with a lot of entrepreneurial minds, and we just all respect that. And just if you have to, you can still go out for, like, for example, Marty and I are going to a book launch party tonight, and we just know we're going to go earlier and make sure we're leaving at probably 9 o'clock and getting home and getting all the last bit of energy out and getting to bed at a good time. So it's just planning ahead and, again, associating with people that are on the same page.
What does your guys' bedtime routine look like?
Well, we have the ideal goal, and we try and work towards that every night. So ideally, we like to kind of be in bed and sleeping by 11, the absolute latest. So 10:30, 11 is the goal. And working back from there, depending on the night, if we've got a podcast to get out or something, some nights can be a little bit crazy, but we try and wind down anywhere between 8 and 10. So that could mean making a tea, watching a show on Netflix. We try and, as much as possible, set up our room for sleep as well too, by putting on a diffuser with some essential oils and dimming the lights and just creating this environment that is conducive to a healthy, restful sleep. So the one that we're really trying to work on as much as possible, and this is, I know, big toughie for us entrepreneurs, is getting the electronics out of the bedroom. And that is key. If someone is able to do that and that's not a big deal for you and you haven't heard this before, take your phone and your computer out of the bedroom. If you do need to do something very small, make sure that you put on one of the apps that's available. So if you've got the newest iPhone, of course, you can switch it into the night shift mode, or you can get something called Flux. So that's an app that you can download on your computer. So there's ways to work around that if you need them in there. So that's part of our nighttime routine, is to make sure that we don't have that blue light glowing. We've got the orange light, which is helpful for a restful sleep.
Yeah, I use similar apps. I'm on Android, so I don't have the famous iPhone Night app, but I use similar apps, and on top of that, I have apps that actually block me from being able to go on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, which for a long time before bed, I'd find myself, even though I knew it was bad, I'd just be like, well, let me check Instagram. And then I start scrolling, and I'm like, before you know it, it's 10 minutes have gone by, and I'm stimulated and I can't fall asleep, basically.
It's funny you should mention the Android iPhone thing, because before the night shift thing came out, I know Androids had apps that do this for a long time. And back in the day, Marty and I had these silly orange screen protectors that we had to put over our phone because there was no software in the App Store that would do that. So about a year ago, when that change happened, it made us so happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next pillar is movement, and this could mean a lot of different things. How do you guys get your movement, and how do you recommend the listeners of this podcast try to get their movement?
Well, the big thing with movement is having movement throughout the day. The old school mentality is get your hour in at the gym and really get in there and crush it, and then go then go to your work day and just do your thing. But for Marty and I, the biggest thing we try and work on is, since we are entrepreneurs and we're on our computers most of the day, we try and either have alarms, or we just try and remind each other throughout the day to stop for a few minutes, do some lunges, do some push-ups, some pull-ups. We've set up our environment in a way where we can just go do some kettlebell swings, even, where we just have these different movements we can do, and that makes all the difference. Again, you don't want to be sitting for 8 hours a day and then at the end of the day make up for lost time by going to the gym, or going to the gym in the morning and expecting that's all you need to do for movement. You really want to incorporate whatever your functional movements are throughout the day.
And do you guys still spend, let's say, an hour in the gym, or is it just throughout the day, little bits and pieces?
A lot of mornings, maybe 3-4 days a week, we do go to the gym first thing in the morning. And we only spend maybe 25-30 minutes there, believe it or not. And we usually do, say, like a little bit of a warm up on the elliptical, and then just go through some different resistance training with different free weights, or work the machines a bit. So we do incorporate that as well, but we don't consider that our daily movement.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is once again another thing that I know when I absolutely do try. I actually personally set a timer for 50 minutes. So it's 50 minutes of me on working, and then I'll do 10 minutes of walking around, doing some kind of movement, and then throughout the day too, like I'll go play some basketball or go do jujitsu for a little while. But it's something that I wish I had even more control of because at the end of the day, for me, and it sounds like for you guys too, my work gets done when I'm on a computer, and I've tried standing desks, and I can kind of work, but I'm three times as efficient when I'm sitting down just hammering out work. So it's a challenge.
And for Marnie and I too, over the last year, we've had a dog, and that forces us midday. Oftentimes, the two of us will pull ourselves away from the computer, go home, pick the dog up, and get out into nature and go for a nice walk for 45 minutes or so. So it's nice in a way to have that forced exercise in the middle of the day. And I just find a walk in the middle of the day is just such a reset for the mind and the body. And coming back, you're just so much more productive.
Absolutely. I'll go for walks all the time around my neighborhood, and I think, to be fair, a lot of times I haven't really taken a shower. You know, I'm in my PJs practically. I think people look at me like I'm a crazy homeless person. I think a dog would definitely help. Be like, no, 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 it's okay. I'm walking the dog, but it's still fun.
For sure.
So the next pillar we have here is meditation, which is something also, once again, so far all these are things that I definitely try to do. What type of meditation do you guys personally do, or do you recommend to the audience?
Okay, and I think I'll just clarify something. The meditation would kind of fall within the self-care. So I think there's one that we didn't say. It's hydration. It would be the sixth pillar. So self-care meditation is all in one. So within that, a lot of people gravitate towards meditation, and it is a wonderful way to calm the mind and take care of the self because it's a way to disconnect. And whether it's an app, a recorded audio, or you're going to a group class, there's so many different ways, or it just could be quiet time just with yourself. So I find people need to find what works for them. The length of time can vary as well too, and it is recommended somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 up to 15 minutes a day, even just to get started. And I just say, really, you got to feel connected to it. Don't just do it because you think you should. Really just, understand the benefits of what meditation are. And I think for Jesse and I, we really understand what it means to have that reset and to just try and quiet the mind as we're so busy all day trying to think and, calculate and recalibrate and all this stuff, like just to let that all go. And that can also be in the form of journaling, which is another, way that you can meditate too, just by writing. So find those areas in your life that allow you to disconnect. And Jesse brought up going for a walk in nature with our dog. That can be meditation for someone. So just do those things that fill you up in those beautiful ways that you may not take the time to do on a daily basis.
Now, one of the things when you first were talking about self-care, I thought about is I've been trying to personally incorporate more, I guess, self-development, not the right word, but learning new things. Is that part of self-care, or would that be a whole different category altogether?
I would say that would fit into self-care. For Marnie and I, it's kind of built in because the people we're interviewing for the show, and I'm sure it's similar for you too, are people that we respect and we really want to learn more from. So we always have a book or two on the go, and we're always learning, and it's kind of built in because of our job. But I think for somebody that doesn't have that built in, that would be a wonderful place to stick it. Yeah.
So that's actually leads me to a different question, side tangent here, but books. Do you guys, it sounds like you guys read a decent amount of books then?
Yeah. Again, we have like 2 or 3 books on the go all the time because I would say 8 out of 10 people we're interviewing for the show have books, and some of them have multiple books. So we really do our research and dig in and try and learn everything we can about the guests before they come on.
Do you guys have a book or books that you've gifted over and over again to people?
Not necessarily, no, but what we have been doing is because we get lots of copies sometimes of our books, definitely two between the two of us, we're gifting those and paying those ones forward. So luckily, with all these awesome health topics, we are gifting them to our listeners, to people in our life, family, friends, parents, siblings. So it's a nice way to spread the wealth
Let me shift
and
the
the health.
question. If for
Sure.
the audience members or for me even, if you had some books to recommend that everyone in their in their 20s that's looking to improve themselves should read? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I'm just thinking. Give me a
Yeah,
sec. There's
I know.
so many.
That's a big, yeah, big question there.
Ah, God, well, we interviewed, this is in the health realm. I know you're talking about entrepreneur, but the biology belief, we just, Bruce Lipton's book is unbelievable. What a fabulous book, just, just to understand our connection to our beliefs and our body and our biology. But in terms of entrepreneur, um, Jess?
I know Tools of Titans is huge. Marty and we haven't actually dug into that one yet. We've seen it at the bookstore, and it's on our wish list. But yeah, in that realm, it's really tough to.
I mean, it doesn't
We
have.
are
It
more
could be.
focused in the health.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be about entrepreneurship at all. Health, I'm definitely open to that. I think any books, for instance, some of the books that I recommend everybody should read is How to Win Friends and Influence People, and what's the other one? Think and Grow Rich. Those are two books that, at least for me personally, really shaped my life. And I guess they're both somewhat entrepreneurship related, but they were just kind of mind opening as far as how much knowledge I can get from a single book.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a book that we had the guest on our show, and it was relation to money, but in a very different way. The book was called Worthy, and that was a really fabulous book as well too. So just understanding the value and connection to money and yourself. So it's a different way of looking at money. That one was a really powerful book as well.
Which the next question actually is probably out of all the pillars that you guys have mentioned, I probably struggle with the most, and I'd love to get some insights from you guys, but community. So can we talk a little bit about community and how someone can enhance their community in their life?
Yeah, really, really important. This is really who we are, social beings. So who we associate with on a daily basis makes a big difference. And especially with an entrepreneur, life can get pretty lonely sometimes. And, you're connected to yourself and your computer, and you've got your social outlets, social media outlets, electronic outlets, but you've got to find those real life communities where you can interact with people. And it's really important to find ones that build you up. So whether it's, like you said, you go and play basketball. So whether it's finding things like that, get you out of your space, you're going to do something active, you're going to do something around people who are doing something that they also love all together. So it's building you up in a different way. Whether it's finding other entrepreneurial groups of people who are like-minded, who are all starting a business or finding different ways to make money or interested in health or well-being, whatever it is, connect with those tribes, make those connections, and really try and surround yourself with the people who are going to build you up as a person. Because the more that we are surrounded by the people that don't live up to what we want to do with our life or how we want to live, i.e. staying up late on weekends, then it starts to take away from you as a person. So Jesse and I have really taken this to heart, especially over the last couple of years. And not that we've cut certain people off, but we've made other people a priority who are in line with where we want to go.
So it seems like there's...
And I think a lot of that...
Sorry.
I was going to say, I think a lot of that does happen naturally when you're really passionate about something and you're out in the community. For us, again, it's health. So we're at the Health Expos in Toronto. There's a lot going on in the health world here. So we're constantly seeing people again and again at all these different health shows. And maybe a bunch of us will go grab dinner afterwards. Maybe we've been connected on social media, so we know the faces. And it just kind of all comes together. And now Marni and I, the people that we are associating with, even just for fun on the weekends, are often these people that are in the health world as well. So it's just a big cycle that keeps getting further and further down the rabbit hole over time. And a big part of it too is having a partner that's on board as well. Like Marni and I, we got together, as she stated earlier in the show, because of the health world. So our vision for our life and our business and our health is right in line with each other, which just makes everything so easy, because it's not like we're having to convince one another of what we want to do on the weekend or how we should invest our money if there's some expensive supplement we want to get, or buying organic food or whatever it might be. I just think you don't need a partner, but when you do have a partner, you want to make sure you're on the same page.
Absolutely. So you kind of beat me to what I was going to ask next, but let's dive in a little bit deeper. So it seems like there's two big elements to having a good community. One seems to be finding new people to add to your community, new friends, new people of that nature. And two seems to be fostering the connections that you already have or potentially eliminating ones that aren't serving you is quite as much. So the first part, as far as finding new friends, you talked about going to different conventions. What else can someone do if, let's say, you just moved, for instance, like me, I just moved to a new location and I really want to plug into the community here, but it doesn't always seem to be as easy as I might have thought.
Well, first thing that comes to mind for me would be to go on social media, specifically Facebook, and there's so many different groups on there. So if you do a search, even your area and whatever your interest is, you're going to find a handful of groups, and a lot of them can get pretty stagnant pretty quickly. But if you get in there and you stir things up and put out a post that you're new to the community and you want to meet some people and not just in the online world, I think you could really get a lot of momentum that way. And then when you tap into from the internet world, when you tap into that and you start meeting for coffee or meeting for dinner or finding out these different events in your niche, you're going to meet other people and they're going to tap you into other groups, whether they're in person or online. And it's just, there's a little bit of friction in the beginning getting in there. But once you're in the world, like Marni and I now have so many options and so much going on, it's more picking what we want to do from all this vast array of awesome options. And I think part of that too is we are in a big city. Toronto is a relatively big city and there's a lot happening in the health world. But I think even in small communities, you can find really passionate people and it's just putting yourself out there. And I think, again, with the internet now, it's so easy to get started.
And the other question I have for you guys, especially as a stereotypical guy who is into entrepreneurship, seems like I'm constantly working. What kind of tips do you have for? I do have some really good friends, and I do have some friends that are also into entrepreneurship, but I sometimes find it difficult, or I forget that I need to foster those relationships. What kind of tips do you guys have for fostering the existing relationships in your life?
So by just keeping them going.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe even making them deeper if possible.
I say make it a priority, like reconnect with the people who really matter to you and, invite them out for coffee or invite them over, go out for dinner. Make it a priority to spend time with the people that you really want to learn from or that can learn from you, that you're walking away from that time together where it's building you up. And at the same time, that might mean that someone else that you don't necessarily want to be with might call you up to hang out, and you may just have to not get together with them. So it's about really honoring yourself in this. But I say, like for Jesse and I, we're really big on we're blessed with lots of friends, but we're more committed to really spending the time and our efforts on the ones that really matter and those quality friendships. So I think you just have to make that a priority. And sometimes we get caught between our head and our heart, or this is my childhood friend, so I got to get together with them. But if it's not fulfilling you, then it's really not worth it.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Oh.
And I also think it's important, you mentioned basketball, and finding an interest that is outside of your career or your entrepreneurial realm that you can just go and have an outlet and relate to different people. Because there's the famous saying out there, you become like the 5 people you associate with most. And for Marni and I, that has become people that are involved in entrepreneurship and health. And I think it's also important, though, to have a balance of good people that say you're interested in pool or skiing or whatever it is, keeping those interests going outside of your career and just fostering those and continuing to stay diverse. I think that's important.
That's an interesting point that you bring up, because it's something I think it's, especially for me, is easy to forget. I have a tendency to only want to associate with other entrepreneurs, but I think that's actually a really valuable point.
And that makes sense too, because I'm sure you're in the same boat where you feel like you have all kinds of time at the beginning of a new week, but there is so many things to do when you're working for yourself, and the days go by so quickly. And especially when you're in front of the computer for a whole day, like I know for me, like half a day can just fly by and it's like, oh my goodness, I have all these things on my to-do list for today. So it can be really hard because there is always more to do. But again, like going for a walk in the middle of the day and how I talked about that can recharge you and get you in a better mind frame for going back to work. I think if you have these other interests and you do take the time to balance it out, that you are going to be your better self when you do go into work again.
Yeah, I love that. So hydration is the last pillar that I almost forgot here. But talk a little bit about hydration. Is this just getting enough water, or is there more to it than that?
There is more to it, but getting enough water is key too, because most people are dehydrated. Most people know they should drink water and just don't do it. Even healthy people who are thinking about it all the time, like personal trainers or people like athletes. So it's about having water on hand all the time, maybe keeping a certain special water bottle, glass or stainless steel with you. And that's key because that's going to help remind you. But the biggest thing too, and Jesse and I are big advocates of the quality of water. So any bottled water just doesn't do it anymore, neither does tap water. It's about trying your best to get access to filtered water. And you can go as simple to as complex as you want at home, whether it's putting something on your faucet to getting something on your countertop. There's a water filtration system called the Berkey water system that you can just order online and get at home. And then you can take it even further by going out and getting your own spring water. And that's something that we love to do every couple of weeks. We'll go about 45 minutes outside the city and we'll go and take big glass bottles and collect our own living water. And when you taste the difference between that water and maybe your everyday tap water, there really is no comparison. And your body actually is hydrated and nourished in a way that you can only experience once you drink living water like that. So, to distill that all down is just to make sure that you have access to water every day and hopefully better quality water.
This actually makes me really excited. I can imagine, like, just when you talk about it, I'm imagining spring water just tasting way better. I've never done that before. How did you find out about the spring close by you guys?
It's funny you should use the word find. It's right in the title of the website that we use called findaspring.com.
Okay.
And you go on there and you put in your location and it's going to have coordinates of all the springs that are in around your area. So it's just really easy to do. And people go on there and add to the material on the website all the time. So not all spring water is legit to drink. So you want to make sure it's been tested and the water is clean and pure to drink. And oftentimes you can get test readings and people put YouTube videos up so you can see what the spring looks like and get an idea before you go there.
Yeah, okay. So that was actually my next question. So there's not any danger of, oh, maybe there's some bacteria in it, or maybe this one has some kind of like lead poisoning or something like that?
You can be hardcore on your own and bring your own. There's different meters that you can bring to test the water. But as Jesse said on the resource, typically most springs that have been found that are being listed have either been checked out by somebody or someone's vetting them. So you know that, it's good enough to drink. Even if there's a city sign there that says do not drink, don't pay attention to the city. Pay attention to usually what someone has maybe done on their own. They've done some different testing because there's, city standards and what actually is okay, because a good spring is coming up from the ground and not hitting anything along the way that's affecting our body, like our typical water system, like our tap system. So findaspring.com is really a good way to go.
Okay, awesome. All right, so those are 6 pillars. We learned a lot of really good stuff here already. I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about what it's like to start the podcast and what you've learned from starting the podcast and any tips you might have for the listeners out there that are looking to start their own podcast.
Yeah, I mean, starting a podcast is really easy on a really basic level. So we could get into all kinds of specifics here, hardware, software, media hosting. But I think if you're somebody out there that has a passion around a topic, and that could be anything, you can just find other people in your area, in that area of whatever knowledge that is. And the easiest way to get started is just to interview like we're doing here and have conversations with these people and record them. And again, there's super cheap and easy software you can put on your computer and you can use Skype to connect with these people, have conversations, record them, and get them out to the world and just see if people are resonating with your message. And you can do it for, again, really cheap in the beginning.
And you've had, like I've said a few different times on this podcast, some amazing guests. How have you gotten such great guests? I mean, I saw you had Ariana Huffington, Dom D'Agostino, who's also been on this podcast. That episode has not come out yet. Abel James, a few other people, James Altucher. How have you been able to get such high quality guests over and over again?
Well, for us, we were already really connected in the health world when we started the show. So we had a network of amazing friends that were really skilled at and knowledgeable. So we started out with the people that we had closest to us and that had great knowledge and were passionate and had a great message to share. And what we did from there was we just leveraged those names. And I think you'd probably hear this over and over again. It's the most basic way to work up to some of those guests that you just named is just reaching out through email or social media to whoever that next guest out of that range is. So you could never reach out to Ariana Huffington if you only had 10 episodes done and you had a bunch of your friends on the show. But over time, if you keep upgrading and upgrading, and again, our guests in the beginning were amazing. It was just that we were connected to them, so it was easier for us to get them on the show. But over time, upgrading and upgrading, and once you have an Ariana Huffington or James Altucher on the show and you use those names in the emails when you're connecting with new people, you can pretty much get anybody. So it's starting slow, building momentum, building up your brand over time, and just hopefully you have some connections already to some pretty amazing people and interview them and then go from there.
The Ariana Huffington one specifically, was that just a cold email? And then talk a little bit about that interaction, actually.
Just trying to zoom back. We've sent out so many emails and connected with so many people, but that one, I actually just went to her website and I think she might have had a contact form on there. And whether it's a contact form or a contact person and you get the email, my message is pretty similar that I'm sending out. So I would have just filled in who we are, some of our previous guests. I really don't get into stats and stuff like that unless they ask for it. Just I don't think it's necessary. But yeah, I think I just filled out a contact form. And here's another part of that one. She had just released a book not too long before that called The Sleep Revolution. So that's another fantastic tip if you're trying to get to somebody a little bit bigger than the growth of your show at that point. Find somebody that has a book coming out that they want to promote. And oftentimes they're going to have a whole media campaign when that book comes out, and you can get bigger guests that way because they're going to want to share the word.
That's a great idea. That makes me think that I should just go on Amazon and see every week like who's recently released a book, and if it's a name of someone that I'd like to interview, just reach out. And you're 100% right. They're probably much more likely to want to appear on the podcast if they just released a book and they're in PR mode. Yeah,
a little tip with that, I would get even books, try and get a list of books that are a few months ahead of time. Because once they get into the release of their book, they're going to be really busy. Like if you try and do it within the first couple of weeks after the book goes live. But if you get them a few months ahead of time, and oftentimes they can give you advanced copies of the books, that's the route to go, and then release the show when that book goes live.
That makes sense. Yeah. So last question here about the podcast, and we'll start wrapping up. How have you grown your listenership? Because it's one thing to have great shows. It's one thing to have great guests on, but ultimately getting people to click that download button, they don't even know how good the show is going to be yet. So what tactics or tips have you used to increase listenership?
Well, this is twofold. There's the techie side, which is, Jesse's really a master of kind of the back end and making sure we've got the right keywords and getting everything posted really well in iTunes and all of our other platforms that the show is released on. And then there's just the actual show, people finding it when people are looking for health shows, or luckily Jesse and I have strong communities that we had before from, our day-to-day lives that we've been building up for the last number of years. So when we're putting it out to those networks, it's just been spreading like wildfire. So, when people are finding it, they're sharing it with their friends, their colleagues, their classmates, their family. And we're really reaching people globally now, which is unbelievable and amazing. So we're noticing now just, again, also the guests too, depending on who the guest is, some of them also share the show as well too. So that really helps the listenership when they put it out to their newsletter or their network. So there's been a wonderful, beautiful, organic upward growth of the show since the beginning. And it really does come from sharing a good message, doing a really good job on the back end, on the techie side, and also making sure that we kind of extend that through our social media outlets as well as our other outlets in person.
And two other things I'll put on top of that too. Consistency is key. We release the show every single week. And right when we started the show, I always say this, there was 1 week we missed around the holidays. Within the first 6 months when we went live. But ever since then, we've never missed a week, and we never would, because consistency and having it released on the same day, if you can, is just so key. And I think having good sound quality is essential too, because there's a lot of podcasts out there that they don't make that little extra investment in learning about how to get good sound quality or getting equipment that sounds good. So when you can have good sound quality, you can set yourself apart from the other shows. And I think, again, if you're really, really relentless about the quality of the show that you're putting out each and every week, like, I'm sure you know this, like, it takes a long time and a ton of effort to put a podcast out every week. So if you're in there and you're tightening everything up, editing, and just really wanting to improve, for me, each and every week when I put out a show, I want it to be better than the last. And I mean, some of that's out of your hands, depending on the quality of the microphone of your guest, or maybe you had a bad Skype connection, or who knows what. But if your goal is to put out a better show each and every week, like it is for us, then people are going to want to listen. People are going to stay subscribed and listen each and every week. And they're going to want to share it with friends and family. So put out quality. It's nothing profound here. It's just stating a lot of the obvious, but put out a quality show and be consistent. And over time, it's just going to grow.
Great advice. I have one last question before we wrap up. And this is a bit of a biggie question, but if you had to go back in time and give yourself some advice around your mid-20s, or alternatively, just some general advice for the audience, who most of which is probably in their 20s, what kind of advice would you give and why?
First thing that comes to mind for me is not to take life so seriously. Try and keep the balance there early on. Life is hard, and you have to work hard, but you also have to play hard. So I just really, that's something that still carries with me, and I'm still trying to find that balance. Just to chill out a little bit more. So if I could tell myself that a little bit younger, I think it would be possibly a little bit more helpful to me now, because I would have a lot of those tools ingrained, and it would be a lot easier for me to relax with the day-to-day hustle. But that'd be my advice.
How about for you, Jesse? Any advice come to mind?
Yeah, Travis, first thing that comes to my mind is stop caring about what other people think. And this really does fit into the podcasting thing, because there might be a lot of people out there that listen to your show, listen to our show, and they'd really want to start a show of their own. And for me, I mean, back in my 20s, podcasting wasn't maybe even an option. It's relatively new technology. But for somebody out there who is worried about what it's going to sound like in the beginning, or is intimidated to get started, you can't worry about what other people think. In the beginning, it's going to be bad. I mean, for me, if I go back and listen to our early episodes, like, I cringe a little bit. I mean, I've improved a lot over that period of time. And yeah, I would just tell the listeners out there, just go spread your message, do what you want to do. That's going to help people, and don't worry about what others are thinking.
Can I add a bonus one?
Yes.
All right. Be open to change and possibility, because, life isn't linear. We've heard that before, but you never know. Just when you get into something and you think that that's, maybe your 5, 10, 20-year plan, it can all go sideways, and a new opportunity can present itself, for better or for worse, in your way, and just be open to continuous changing possibilities.
I love it. A whole episode's been full of just some great advice. I really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about both of you guys?
Well, since the listeners are already listening to a podcast, I think the best thing to do would be to go to ultimatehealthpodcast.com, or just go to iTunes and search the Ultimate Health Podcast. Find our show. If you've enjoyed the information we're sharing here, I'm sure you're going to love our show. Subscribe, and we put out a weekly show, like we've talked about here, with an health and wellness expert once a week. And we're just going to keep on putting them out and keep on improving, like I said.
Perfect. All right. I'll put links in the show notes. And thank you guys both so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Travis. You asked a lot of great questions, and this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe. Like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.